Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to today's very special live stream event here on the Tattooed Historians YouTube channel. I'm so excited to be able to host this event alongside my good friend Richard Heisler of Civil War Seattle / Seattle History Tours. He is live from the Evergreen-Washelli Funeral Home in Seattle, Washington for today's event. It's going to be a spectacular thing to see, and I'm really excited for you to see what is happening. We wish you could be there in person, but if you cannot be there, obviously you can watch on this live stream and tomorrow's live stream as well. Richard, thank you so much for helping to host this event.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, John, for giving us a venue, with, so to speak, for which people can watch this that can attend. I know it's hard to travel to Seattle, especially on short notice. It's not a convenient place, especially for most folks interested in the Civil War. This is kind of the end of the earth if you're living back on the East Coast. So it's really nice that you'll give the opportunity for people watching elsewhere that would love to be part of such a historic event as this. And it's just physically not practical. So thank you for providing that for us and providing it for everyone who gets to watch today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and thank you to the Civil War Monitor for sharing out the information on this event, and thank you to Emerging Civil War for also sharing out our events. And anyone I may have forgotten, Richard, did I forget anybody? I'm sure other people did, but
Yeah, there's
they were the big.
plenty out there, but yeah, for sure the Monitor in Emerging Civil War just this morning put a nice effort together to get this in front of their audiences. So if you're tuning in from either of those, give us a comment, let us know where you're watching from and all that. And thank you for them for helping support our efforts with the live stream and the event in general as well. The Civil War community is really galvanized around this as best we can. As disparate as our locations are, I think there's a unity for wanting to support what we're doing here today. So that's great.
Indeed. So everyone watching, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take myself off of the screen so we can make Richard's screen bigger. And he is going to walk us into the funeral home and allow us to see what is going on inside. Richard will still be able to hear me. I believe you in the audience will still be able to hear me as well. And I can help to keep the conversation going and take some questions from the audience and pass along to Richard as well as we go through. So, Richard, I'm going to tear myself down here from the live so I can make your screen larger and we can get underway.
Okay. All right. Well, while you're doing that, I am just in the front entrance here to the Evergreen-Washelli Tribute Center. This is kind of Seattle's really premier funeral home and a very, very large and very quite historic cemetery. We can't see it because there's foliage on the trees, but there's a very, very large veterans. You can see maybe some of the headstones in the distance through the trees of large veterans cemetery here. So this place has always had a special focus on veterans, on honoring veterans, going from the Civil War generation to the modern day. So this is really the perfect venue. And as we go in here, you'll see just how lovely a space and reverential a space this is, and how well they handle these sort of events. So if you're in Seattle, this is a wonderful place just to come and visit for the historic cemetery that's here and all of Seattle's history, in addition to what's specifically happening today. So we're coming into the entrance now, and we have a sign in and the guest book here on this side. I'll quickly introduce this. This is the Missing in America Project, and they're the ones who are responsible for this whole event today, with identifying the remains and going through the process with the Veterans Administration to get them approved for placement and all that. So these guys are really what this whole thing runs through. So we want to start with the introduction to them and what they do, and this friendly and kind staff here at Evergreen-Washelli, and a new description of the remodeling of this Veterans Memorial Tower. Here's some images, real quick, I'll zoom in, of the Veterans Cemetery on the other side. And so that's also part of the tradition of honoring the veterans here begins with that historic part of the cemetery. So I guess we'll start here. This is the entranceway, and feel free to chime in with questions from you guys or from the comments or anything as we go here.
Yes, please do.
Here's a little bit about Missing in America and others and programs from the day. These are what the visitors get when you come in. We have honoring veterans here with a lineup of the order of service for the 1 o'clock memorial on the back. And then inside, this is a really nice keepsake, is a roster of all of the veterans and spouses that are part of this service. This wonderful photo of one of our veterans with his little dog here on the table. It's a great photo. And then a couple historic photos from the early days of the cemetery. This is one of the original burials of the first, I believe, World War I veteran that was interred in that veteran cemetery when it became formalized in 1927. And these little souvenir keychain pins, which I am actually going to take one so I don't miss out. For all the guests, anybody that visits today, you can take one of these as a keepsake. And here, just to the left, as we enter, is the roster. And I love this lineup here with the names, and I'll zoom in as best I can, of the soldiers and their service. Here's George Gillespie, 102nd Pennsylvania, James Haggerty, 5th New Jersey, going down. And one thing that you can see real clearly here, and then here's spouses. I'll point this out specifically. That there's spouses of veterans whose husbands passed away and they're interred elsewhere, or maybe their remains have not been located. But they're eligible through the Veterans Administration as a spouse of a veteran for placement in a national cemetery. So that's why they're listed here slightly separately. But if you look at the names, the list of names, you'll notice the diversity. And that's a real hallmark of the Civil War veterans in Seattle and all over the West, really, but especially here, is that they're not from one area. They're from everywhere. As you go down, there's New Hampshire and Kentucky and Wisconsin and Minnesota and Pennsylvania and New Jersey, Indiana, Rhode Island, West Virginia. So it's the array of history that's represented in general in Seattle is incredible. But even within this group of 28 veterans, that diversity is incredible. The level of history, the stories from among them is just absolutely phenomenal. So this is the tribute hall itself. This is the seating where everyone will be seated today for the memorial service. We have some ambient Civil War music playing here in the background for everybody that are visiting. So this is open all day. Here we have flower arrangements that were contributed from a variety of organizations, specifically for this event. And they were each sent with the flowers and also a statement from the different organizations. This one here is from the Civil War Roundtable of Milwaukee and the Iron Brigade Association with their information. We have one here from the Puget Sound Civil War Roundtable. Their information and a little bit about them. The Civil War Museum in Kenosha, Wisconsin, contributed this arrangement on this side. So we're getting some participation from this from all over. It's not just locally. And then here's the urns themselves. There's, like I said, 28 veterans and 31 spouses total. Some married couples, some sort of unattached spouses. This chair in the middle, which is symbolic of the vacant chair tradition of the Grand Army of the Republic, in the center, and a couple stacks of muskets, again reflective of the Grand Army tradition, and a slideshow that's rolling through a lot of their photographs. So this is Jasper Bertram, Kinetic 9th Kentucky soldier on the screen, and so every visitor you get to see pictures. Here's Jasper Bertram again later in life, So we do have some images that go along with these. These are a variety of things, shapes and forms. There's two distinct types here. So there's this square wooden, which looks newer, right? These cherry stained kind of wood ones, and then these oak stained wood ones. These were because the original storage containers, or perhaps urns, but more often cardboard boxes that they were found in, um, weren't intact enough to go through this, or they wouldn't fit into a niche in the National Cemetery, so they were placed into these new urns, and they all individually have their name. Let me get a better angle. So here's George Camp. He was 92nd Ohio Infantry, and his wife, where is his wife? Ernestine is somewhere here next to him. So we tried to pair up the couples as best we can. But then also there's historic urns as well that are nicer, and they were built more sturdy. And so these ones have not been altered. This is the original urn from 1917 of Celia Melvin. She's here with her husband, and they have matching urns, which is really cool. And quite historic object in and of itself. You can see the patina on the copper. Here's James Tinkham. He has a round copper urn, and then the Missing in America had these labels made for them, and the original label is often inside the urn with the remains, or sometimes it's attached on the outside here, like this. Here's James Haggerty, New Jersey, 5th New Jersey man. So you can see, I'll rotate it a little bit with my hand here. You can see his old original label on it. So these are how the Missing in America identifies them, is things like this, or other tabs on the old cardboard boxes. This one, it's a little hard to see, but you can see the engraved name on it. So it's a process to sort through them. This one's really neat because it's just this handwritten label on top, and then her labels for today is this one. And some of them will come way down here to the ground level. The carpet actually have like the old paper tag on it from the original funeral home.
Wow.
And this has been exactly like this for a century until now. Here's another, I'm a little shaky here as I'm moving. Here's another one with the wax seal from the funeral home on it, and the original ribbon from whenever she passed away, or he passed away, Edwin Pike. So
that's amazing. That's amazing, Richard. We have a question from in our comment section. Let me see here. Joshua Fry, Executive Administrator for Emerging Civil War, is tuning in. Thank you, Joshua, for being here. He asked, what was the process for identifying and researching these men, and how did they get to Seattle?
Well, that's a lot to answer. The identification process it's slow and tedious, and I will say that to accumulate this group of the veterans here, the 28 Civil War veterans, they were separated out along the way from the veterans of other conflicts, of the First World War, Spanish-American War, Second World War. They're a lot easier to find, a lot easier to identify. But these are the work of about 3 years, and they slowly go through the Missing in America Project researchers and look at the names on each of these original urns in their storage facilities, storage rooms in the various historic funeral homes in the area. And then they take those names. Sometimes it's obvious. It's a known person. Like we've wondered where that guy was, and it's a slam dunk. Other ones, especially the spouses, like in this case here, she was a pretty easy spouse to identify because her husband, Charles Thompson, was a really well-known architect in Seattle and a really well-known Grand Army man. So it was easy to go, okay, look at some marriage records, death records, which would have things that you can quickly, through the genealogical research, pair those two up. Other ones, it becomes a lot more challenging to identify, and then to prove their service on paper for the Veterans Administration takes a lot of legwork. Death records, census reports, marriage certificates become very important for a spouse whose husband is not present. That's more of a challenge. When the couple is here, or the husband, proving service is easier, but to prove that she's the second wife of somebody and then prove his service can get really difficult. So it takes a lot of homework on their behalf, and patience and time to make the identifications. Then you have to submit it to the Veterans Administration for approval. And so you have to meet their standards, the burden of proof that this is the soldier that you say he is, and where's the records to prove it. So they have to accumulate more and more and more records to make a case for them for the adjudication to get them approved. So it's a tedious and long process with that identification. It's mostly patient genealogical work. That's that. How did they get to Seattle? That's an entirely we need another 2-hour live stream for that. Mostly it's just to summarize it, it's westward immigration, primarily in the late 1880s to the 19 teens, that they moved west. Usually typical Seattle veterans left the states they fought from and then moved to Michigan or Kansas or Nebraska or Iowa, lived there for a decade or two, got married, started their families there, and then when the Transcontinental Railroad connection is established with the Northwest and Seattle, then there's a bigger jump to them to make it all the way out to Seattle. So that's the short version, the shortest possible version of how do they wind up here. That's a tough question to answer. They all have a story individually, but generally speaking, they're just a part of the larger migration that comes here, starting in the late 1880s. And there's some that come here earlier, but they're few. It's after 1890 that the population really explodes here with veterans and otherwise.
And this is exactly why a lot of people need to go follow Richard and Civil War Seattle, because of the fact that there are so many of these stories out there that need to be told, and Richard does a great job doing that, either through digital spaces or through tours, and you'll learn about why these men and women came west in some aspects, or what their life was in the West, how they helped build Seattle.
And some of them is very specific, and some of them we have no idea. And they've all got an individual and separate story. Every set of ashes has a story why it was left behind, why they were discovered when they were, why were they here to begin with, what did they do in the Civil War. Every single one of them has an entire life, that way. So I think, so this is the tribute center room, like I said, and that's really why we're here today. But then this is the exhibit side. So maybe we should spend our last 10 minutes or so going through this.
Sure.
And it's great that we talked about some of their stories, because that's what's featured in here is a little bit larger pullback sort of look at the veterans in general, but then also specifically some of the ones in there. So this is the exhibit room. You come in from the entrance here and you turn to the left, and folded flag, of course, which is standard symbolic aspect of anything to do with American veterans now. Seattle Civil War Legacy by Civil War Seattle here. And then when you enter on the left, there's one panel here with an introduction, just kind of what I just talked about who they were, how they wound up here, why we even care, why is Civil War history relevant to Seattle, just in a couple paragraphs about that. And then the rest of the room here, as we go around, and we'll go slowly through it here for our last few minutes, is all artifacts and objects related specifically to Civil War veterans of Seattle. There's some more general things, like there's a canteen that's not necessarily a Seattle canteen, but all the objects and artifacts in here are directly relevant to Seattle proper. We have a wonderful Union fatigue blouse and belt and cartridge box and forage cap with, you can see, New Jersey Volunteers and the infantry horn on top that was provided by a good friend of ours from New Jersey. So we had the opportunity to put this together with that New Jersey soldier earlier this morning. That was a really cool moment to set this hat, this forage cap, next to the actual physical remains of a 5th New Jersey infantryman. So there's some really poignant moments that are happening all throughout this day, things like that. Here's a lot of Grand Army of the Republic artifacts, which we'll look in a second. But one of the main features here is some individual stories of some of the men in the room, in the service, in those urns. So here we have John McSwain, 118th Pennsylvania. He started the war as a Confederate soldier in a Georgia infantry regiment. He deserted in 1862 and walked to Pennsylvania. And then that's where he enlisted in Philadelphia. So this is his story of how that service progressed. This is the story of George Camp, 92nd Ohio. And these are just vignettes. They're not their entire biography. It's just one little interesting thing about their role in the Civil War or else other aspects of their life. George Camp was involved in the construction when the 92nd Ohio was detailed to build Chattanooga National Cemetery in January and February of 1864. So this one's I'm especially fond of because he built the first ones, and Chattanooga was, of those 5 national cemeteries established after Lincoln's order in '63 that were created, this was the only one by the labor of enlisted active duty soldiers, because the Army was encamped in Chattanooga, so they had the labor force, and George Thomas insisted that those men build that cemetery to bury initially the 1,100 or so, I believe, men who had died at Chickamauga. And this 92nd was devastated at Chickamauga, so he prepared the very first national cemetery for his own comrades with the sweat of his own brow and the labor of his arm and shovel. It's amazing, and it's taken 160 years for him to get into one himself. So this is especially poignant today. Peter Pancho has a very fascinating story. He was one of 5 brothers that fought for Minnesota, and their father, a real Saving Private Ryan level family of service in the war at the same time. But after the war, he was a champion pedestrian. So today's kind of equivalent of race walking. He was well known for that in the 1870s and 1880s. So it's not all Civil War history, it's their lives as well. Orrin Garrell's a Wisconsin man who was on the March to the Sea. William O'Neill, who was a prisoner in Andersonville survivor. There's a number of those. We have 2 Confederate prisoner of war camp survivors in our group today. And James Tinkham, which is hard to see with the light here. He was a Vermonter who applied and was accepted into the Free Military School at Philadelphia, which was sort of that very progressive, cutting-edge training academy, basically, for white candidates for officer positions in the U.S. colored troops. The really unique thing about the Free Military School is it wasn't just for like the next first sergeant that's waiting for a promotion to lieutenant. They took men that were sought out to be the most qualified, had the best ability, leadership, character, all of those things. They were looking for them as the best people for the job, regardless of rank. You could be a private or you could be a major, whatever. It didn't matter. If you were the best guy for the job, they felt there were qualified men all throughout the Army to lead these newly formed African-American regiments. And that's how his story transformed throughout the war. Let's come down here to the table a little bit. Here's a little background on the Grand Army of the Republic for visitors, and the Women's Relief Corps, the Veterans Organization, and the Women's Affiliate Auxiliary Organizations. There's 2 things. I'll zoom in here a little bit. So John McSwain, who's this ex-Confederate, these are just a couple documents from his original funeral. This is the itemized receipt from the funeral home, which is where we are today, to the Veterans Administration to get reimbursed for the funeral costs. So you can see his taking his body to the mortuary was $5. His original cremation, why he's in that room, was $35. 20 cents for the long distance phone call, probably back to Washington, D.C. Here is the order form from his daughter for the flag for his casket. remarkable document. He is in there in the other room, and he's the one that we really do have a story as to why he's there, because he died. He was living here with his only daughter. She had no children, and within a year of his passing away, she got sick and died herself, and that's why he was left behind, because there was no one to pick him up. There were no family left. So it took 100 years until Missing America went in and found him, and now brought him out to finish this process. This process was never finished until today. So that's what we're doing in these cases. And I'll speed up here a little bit. We're getting long. Our Grand Army of the Republic ribbons and badges from Seattle specifically. This one says Ballard, Washington. That's a neighborhood in Seattle. It was an independent city at the time, but it was annexed into the city of Seattle later. Lots of wonderful original documents, and these are all from my personal Civil War Seattle collection. These are all specifically Seattle items or relevant to Seattle. So here we have a journal of the Grand Army of the Republic encampment from Seattle in 1917. So everything in here has to do specifically with Seattle. And here's a number of original CDV photos of Seattle veterans during the war. This fellow here in the middle, he's buried in this cemetery, which is pretty cool. These photos are veterans' funerals from the soldiers' home that's closest to Seattle. A lot of the veterans that went to live there to be cared for in their final years, there's about 1,000 of them that were buried in this cemetery. So these are some really, really powerful photos when you see them in person. It's a Grand Army of the Republic membership badge, and ladies of the GAR and the Women's Relief Corps. On this side, some artifacts, some more reproductions, some well-worn shoes that were at the 135th anniversary reenactment of the Battle of Antietam. You would appreciate that, John. You knew those miles that those shoes marched. Some other items. These aren't Seattle specific, but they're regional Grand Army. So a discharge from Oregon. Some pictures of that soldier's home where that cemetery took place. Really cool artifact from my friend Jim Diamond, intact Hotchkiss artillery shell. So that's kind of cool. And a beat up canteen. And then this photo. This is a really remarkable one. This is the Washington State delegation to the 1913 Gettysburg reunion.
Oh, very cool.
These are all Washington soldiers here. Multiple of them are buried in this cemetery where we are today.
That's really
and then we have the women's side over here a little bit. I'll just kind of wrap it up here on this with the story of one of the women who's in there who's unaccompanied by a veteran spouse named Evelyn Mattis. Her husband died earlier. Her husband survived the war, but she lost 2 brothers in the fighting. So this is her story of, how the war affected women. A wonderful Victorian mourning bonnet, some pictures of women here, and a Grand Army family. This is a really great photo of a smiling Grand Army of the Republic man and his wife and 2 children. Some more women. I just love this photo. This is really a favorite of mine. And then the last little bit here that just talks about the veterans of the Civil War that are buried here in this historic cemetery. And there's well over 100 of them just in this cemetery alone. So it talks a little bit about that history, including this man who is named Hiram Gale. He's the last surviving veteran of the American Civil War in Washington State. He died in 1951. He was the Grand Army of the Republic Commander-in-Chief in 44 and 45 year was when he served in that role. So this is his formal portrait as GAR commander. This is a photo of him here in Seattle with his daughter after he got the position or was elected to that position. And then here is a monument to Hiram Gale, which was, he died in 51. This monument was put up in 1953 by the ladies of the GAR and the Women's Relief Corps. And this is the dedication, the unveiling of that monument here in this cemetery in 1953. So that's really cool. And then the last stop is you can get a card if you want to take a tour or you want more info. You can see this, but this. So I encourage every visitor here today on the way out. This is Hiram Gale's handprint taking on his 99th birthday here in Seattle while he was Commander-in-Chief of the Grand Army of the Republic, and it is reproduced exactly to size. And you can put your hand on this. So you get a chance to kind of virtually, as close as you can, shake hands with a Civil War veteran, especially the last survivor. This is him. This is his handprint. That's as close as we'll get to contacting an old soldier. So that's the exit. And so I'll come around here.
I definitely want to give you a shout out, Richard, for multiple reasons. But one is that with little training in public history, you have created such a space out there with all those artifacts of your many from your own collection, museum quality in there, and I couldn't have done it better. So bravo to you for that effort. That looks incredible.
Well, thank you. It's this is a culmination of really years of work into this, of collecting the knowledge and the stories and the relevance and the items and patiently putting them all together. And then that just happening to sort of work out at the timing that this happened. And it's also, it's the staff here at Evergreen-Washelli is a big part of why this event looks the way that it does, with the quality of the presentation, the lighting, the items to hold the picture frames, the easels, all those little details that make something present the way that it does. This display where the urns are was custom made this weekend for this event. This is all a product of a great team of people that had to come together for all this. This dress, the woman who owns this and made this dress in the bonnet is the director of the Tacoma Historical Society. She loaned us this. So there's a lot of people that came together for this. And Dan Casella in New Jersey sent his meticulously reproduced federal uniform. So I appreciate the praise for the curation, but I also definitely want to be sure to acknowledge everybody that was a part of this, and the graphic design team here at Washelli that put this entrance display together and those keychains. And then the last thing, one other thing that's happened at 12 o'clock today is here in this room. So there's space for light refreshments and to unwind and to come in here and chat and socialize. But at 12 o'clock, from 12 to 12:30 today, Dr. Brian Matthew Jordan is going to give a talk in here based on his book, Marching Home, The Lives of Union Veterans After the Civil War. So this is an all-day thing. So people are starting to come in now. And I know that's going to accelerate between now and 1 o'clock for the next, 3.5 hours. So this will be a pretty vibrant place with lots of different things to experience while you're in here.
That's fantastic. Thank you again, Richard, for doing this. It means a lot to me, but also obviously it means a lot to everyone who's been watching who cannot be there in person. What are we going to, just a real quick glimpse of this, what are we going to experience tomorrow?
Tomorrow is an entirely different beast. Tomorrow is the actual placement of these remains in the Tacoma National Cemetery. So tomorrow, what we'll do is these will be loaded into the Evergreen-Washelli hearse here, and that will be driven down. The cemetery is about an hour drive to the southeast of where we are in Seattle. And then there will be a ceremony that lasts about an hour and a half, and that's what you'll be streaming tomorrow, that starts at 12:30 Pacific. It'll begin with a couple short comments from some people. There's a lot to do here. All these urns have to go into the custody of the United States to be placed in the cemetery. So that's going to take a lot of time, and we have 90 minutes. So there'll be some brief comments. The Sons of Union Veterans will do a modified version of the Grand Army of the Republic ritual for the burial of a veteran. So it's specific. It's not a memorial. It's not a headstone placement. It's an actual service that they tailored and they edited specifically to reflect this is an actual interment and a burial. This is not just replacing a headstone. So that's going to be what leads off the service tomorrow between 12:30 and 1. And then from 1 to 2 will be the individual placement one by one. These will be picked up from the hearse and they will be announced and they'll be walked slowly over and given over into the custody of the United States. Whether it's a soldier or it's a representative from the VA, I don't know specifically who they're handed off to. And then from that point, they are then in the custody of the United States once again. And then by the end of the day, they are placed in the cemetery. So they don't go into storage again or anything. By 4 o'clock tomorrow, they are in their niche, sealed. So this is the last time that we see them, is here today in this space. So by the time your live stream is over tomorrow, you will only read their name carved in granite from that point forward.
And they'll finally be laid to rest properly and
Yes.
And not on a shelf or anything like that. It's going to be a very emotional event to watch, I'm sure. And I cannot imagine what your emotions are going to be being a part of it. You know.
And there will be, this won't be on the live stream, but there will be a large escort to follow the hearse down. The Patriot Guard riders is a veterans group of that ride their motorcycles with flags and everything. And so all of Seattle and everybody that we pass on the freeway for an hour driving will see this procession going from here to the cemetery. So I've heard that's very emotional. People stop, they pull over, they get out of their cars, they salute as the remains pass because they recognize what it is, that it's not just an average funeral. So tomorrow is going to be a heck of a day. So if you're anywhere in the Seattle area and you're watching this locally, please make a point of coming to Tahoma tomorrow. If you couldn't make this today and you're watching virtually, please come to the interment tomorrow. You won't regret it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, if you're anywhere in the area, don't be on the live stream. Go to the actual event.
Yes, only watch the live stream if you're in Connecticut. If you're in Washington State, be in Kent tomorrow and join us.
Yeah, if you're not in the state of Washington, you're going to want to be there. If you're anywhere around the area, please go and experience this once in a lifetime event. Big shout out to the Missing in America Project for what they're doing and what they continue to do.
Yes. Here, let's. I'll let her say hi, Lynn. This is Lynn Lake. She's one of the two main coordinators for Missing in America here in Washington. So everything we just talked about, we're talking about the research and the paperwork and all that. That's who does it. So say thank you everyone to Lynn. Put some comments in there and hearts and all that kind of
Thanks, Lynn.
stuff. So she and Tom Keating are why the magic happens. And a whole bunch of other and a lot of other researchers, but she's the one that's here in front of me, so she gets on the camera.
There it is. Yeah, so. That's great. Yeah, and it's great that you realized, or that you let us all realize that this is a long process.
Yes.
It's 3 years. It's legalities. It's stuff like that. It isn't just,
Yeah, and that's kind of why this was sort of sprung. It's because of all the legal issues and hurdles and hoops, so to speak, and red tape that has to be required for the transfer of the custody of human remains and their identities and next of kin, and the process, respecting the process involved with the government and applications and all that. So that's why this may seem like it kind of came out of the blue, although it's been in the works for years to make this happen. So
Indeed. Well, thank you, Richard, so much for this walkthrough.
Thank you, John.
It means a lot to me. It means a lot to everyone in the chat. Thank you to people who have showed up for this live stream event, including people from Emerging Civil War were in here. Thank you so much for that. Civil War Monitor, thank you so much for sharing this out. And everyone, I want you to realize that this is part one of a 2-part series. Basically, we'll be live again tomorrow for the ceremony at the National Cemetery. We would love for you to join us in person, preferably, but if not, you can join us here on the live stream. And please go follow Richard's work at Civil War Seattle. He's doing amazing things out there. It's growing, and I'm so appreciative of his work out there and appreciative of his time. And Richard, again, this was amazing. Thank you so much, my friend.
Yeah, thank you for facilitating. It's really a privilege to be able to do this, and a privilege to share it with everybody everywhere. This is all of our history. It's not Seattle. It's not Washington. It's not Civil War fans. This is a moment for all of us. So even if you can't be here, just know that this is done for the veterans, but also for us to remember and say thank you to these guys one last time.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Very well said. Thank you, everyone.
Great.
Have a wonderful rest of your day. Richard, enjoy the event.
Yes, be a
I'm
busy
sure
day.
it's going to be very busy. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you again, everyone, for joining us in the chat and being here. We will see you tomorrow.
All right. Thanks, John.